Hi everyone, it's Simon from Horoma Studio. It's 2021 and it's that time of the year where everyone from the internet is going to tell you what to do with your life, what new habits to implement, and what new resolution to take for this new year. And I'm about to do just the same. Jokes aside, I think New Year resolution can be a nice tool as long as you set the resolution yourself and then copy others and copy what they're doing. So to keep it open and make it more flexible, what I'm gonna do is frame the whole thing through questions and themes rather than direct pieces of advice. Using questions will be better because it will help you in, as I said, setting your own standards and goals, and also it will help you in refining those goals over time rather than being stuck with one set of goals that you've used 6 months ago. The main question I'll use as an entry point is a pretty tricky one, but one that I think we all need to deal with at some point. And that question is, how will you differentiate yourself? Before jumping onto the themes I want to propose to you, there's an underlying more fundamental one that I want to tackle first. And that one is you or yourself or life. I don't really have a tag for that. The idea is that you can't run a healthy business if you're not a healthy person in the first place. And this can sound stupid, but as creative people, we tend to have a hard time differentiating life from work because everything is always super intertwined. And it comes from the fact that we usually do enjoy what we do. But the thing is that it can end up feeling like you're always working. Sometimes this can be conscious, which is a good thing because at least you're aware of the issue. But sometimes it can be unconscious and you're actually thinking you're okay, but you're actually just really draining your attention and motivation basically. And you end up doing things for work rather than the other way around. This happens, for instance, when every time you just go out to take a stroll or whatever, you have this really analytic way of looking at things because you're gathering references of lighting and colors and things like that you can use further in your work. So I think it's important to sometimes just do things for the sake of just doing things and not have this underlying goal or justification. And this idea of bringing mindfulness to the segmentation that should exist between your work and yourself. So maybe sometimes it's interesting to sit down and take time to relax or meditate even, so that you make sure that there's alignment between what you are doing with your work and what you would like to do with your life. And differentiating yourself on a personal level is basically paramount to make sure that the goals and standards you've set are yours and not someone else's. So now on to the themes and pillars I want to explore with you and helping you hopefully in getting a big picture of how you want to shape your work and life in general. The first pillar that I think is important in order to sort of shape your understanding and exploration around is the idea of theory. And basically the big question is how deep is your knowledge of your actual craft, not the technical part. Because as I said, if your knowledge is mostly technical based, then it will be probably quite irrelevant soon as technologies are becoming easier and easier to use. Knowing your theory is basically crafting images mindfully. So by understanding why you're doing things and not just doing things completely randomly. It can reach a point where all your process becomes unconscious, but it's still based in a strong knowledge and not ignorance. If you want to check how deep your knowledge goes, the easiest way is actually to just pick a single really tiny topic and ask why as many times as you can and answer the question. So if you're putting a person here on your specific area of your image, and just ask why you're putting it here and not elsewhere, and then see how many times you're able to answer the question why. And this works in really big topics or smaller topics. And your ability to answer with unbiased knowledge rather than just I like it that way is going to show you how you're actually doing things based on a strong knowledge of theory and not just the fact that you like things and not others, which is going to be something that you can't really sell to a client if they don't agree with you. The second pillar that I want to talk about and that I think is becoming more and more important is this idea of communication. By communication, I don't mean visual communication, but more like this one-on-one relationship we're trying to build with your client or with employees or colleagues. I think a good and fun question to ask and start with is this idea of what do you want your client to think of you? Do you want to be perceived as like this really open-minded freelancer that has like super ideas and is always solving problems? Or do you want to be perceived as like this egotistic artist that doesn't listen to anything and always go his own way and doesn't care about anything? And the second question that I think is important is like, how often do you ask for feedback from your client? Because there's always like a strong discrepancy between what we think people think and what they actually think. And there's no better way to know what they think than to just ask for it. So it is really paramount to ask for feedback. So how often do you do that? Another interesting thing is to wonder like how often do you reflect on conversations or emails exchanges that you've had with your clients, and to see how like why a project happened the way it happened, whether it was good or bad, because it's always by reflecting back on like the conversations you've had that you will be able to see where things went good or bad. The last pillar I want to talk about is a pretty core one, but yet quite simple when you think about it, and it's the workflow. Just a couple of questions I think that are quite nice to sort of orientate yourself in there is this idea of like how much time are you wasting on your day-to-day work due to inefficiency of your workflow? And on the contrary, to fix that, how much time are you spending to experiment and optimize that workflow? In a broader sense, I think it's also interesting to wonder how much time you're dedicating to things you actually like. And like basically if the time allocation you're doing on your work is actually reflecting what your interests are. Because if you're spending most of your time doing things that you actually don't care about, then it's not really good. And you need to sort of change that and aim at like spending time on things you actually like and also things you're actually good at. One last thing that I think is quite nice to have in mind is this idea that the bottlenecks you can accept are the ones you set yourself. So it can be like saying, I only work 40 hours a week or 30 hours a week or even 20 hours a week, or I will never work after 6 p.m. or things like that. And once you have those sort of small bottlenecks, you will be able to sort of reorganize your schedule basically and the way you work and optimize your workflow. And that from there you can sort of like reverse engineer what I just said about like how to optimize your workflow to reflect that sort of differentiation basically that you would be aiming for. That's all for the video. The idea here was to give you major themes and questions to navigate them in order to find some ideas on how to tackle the upcoming year. The main point here is not to fall into the trap of setting pre-made and static goals that you would copy from others, but instead to rely on a more evolving and like fine-tuned and bespoke system that will let you set standards that you want to live by, whether it's on a personal or on a professional level. I hope this short video will help you in that way and will help you set and design your own path for 2021. So feel free to comment, like, and do what people do on YouTube these days. And again, all the best for 2021, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.